Okay, this is gonna be a new one for me, you guys. I even changed up my camera setup. Okay, so KO King Canadian getting ready for why didn't Jamaica join Canada? Probably because they're Jamaica, and I'm Canadian. I'm just saying this, and we have a strong relationship with Jamaica to this day. But at the same time, independence. I'm guessing that's the reason.
It's not a part of Canada. Seems obvious, but there have been a couple of points in history where a union between the two has been proposed. The same is also true for the rest of Britain's former colonies in the Caribbean, where the same idea was put forward in the 1960s. So why didn't it happen? Why isn't Jamaica or any of these countries a part of Canada? So in the 19th century there were some small-scale discussions of...
Probably because I don't play ice hockey. I don't know. Like, okay, so this is going to be kind of weird for a lot of people, but I grew up in North Gore. So in North Gore, there's a lot of farmer fields, and a lot of Jamaicans would come over from Jamaica to make a lot of money picking corn. It's weird. It sounds like, well, why would they come over from Jamaica to work a mediocre job where they are actually making less than a part-time employee? Oh, because that's the job that they can get, and that money is a lot more than you think it is in Jamaica. It's weird, but that's the way it was. And I'm like one white kid working with a shit ton of Jamaicans. And I am slow as shit. I'm not kidding. Like, these guys are way faster than me. I'm not trying to be racist or anything. That's just the way it was. Better work ethic. They needed to bring home money. Where I was a kid trying to buy an Xbox 360. Come on. You got to know the difference in work ethic when it comes to I want to play games with my friends to I want to send home money to my kids. And that was a big deal. And they're actually I hope they get to that. Hope they may not, but that was me. I'm not going to shade out of it. That's what it was. I worked for a white Christian farmer who definitely took advantage of that shit. You know who you are. And I hate you.
On who should be able to join the brand new Canadian Confederation. Britain was fairly neutral on whether or not its Caribbean territories would be run from London or Ottawa. This was because a colony of a colony is still really a colony, and also Britain's attention was much more focused on India because money. This discussion was mostly academic though until after the First World War. At this point Britain was struggling with being broke. As such, British Prime Minister David Lloyd George wanted to consolidate the governments of some colonies to make things cheaper. And one such proposal was that Canada, which was much less bankrupt, would run the Empire's Caribbean colonies. But Canada's Prime Minister Robert Borden declined. Not because he didn't want the islands. He definitely did, mostly as compensation for all of the world warring that Canada had been doing. He reluctantly declined though because the Canadian people opposed it. Many of whom, including the opposition, saw Empire...
So we're opposing. Like, we don't want this. Because Canada loves being the younger brother of America. It's one of those untold things. But imagine your bigger brother just kicking the shit out of you, but you fighting back and then you getting the better up on them and then being... them being... Okay. That was us in America for the longest time. Canada and America was... Actually, I think to this day we still are like those younger brother, older brother mentality, and it's ridiculous. A lot of people are gonna be like, "You're an idiot," but that's the way I've felt for a long time, especially in hockey, because I've grown up in hockey, and trust me, America's gotten really good at hockey. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right back to it.
There is the reason why Canada had been dragged into the conflict in the first place, and as such Jamaica remained under the control of London. During World War II, Britain's relationship with its Caribbean colonies became strained, and as a result Canada filled the void and relations between the two improved. The British government could see that its empire was unravelling, and so it opted to begin the process of preparing the Caribbean for independence. It did this with the least effort possible in what's known as boilerplate independence. This is where Britain used a one-size-fits-all approach to decolonisation. Britain didn't want to repeat this process 10 times, and so it just merged all of its Caribbean colonies together to form the West Indies Federation. During this process, it was discussed whether or not they would become independent or simply join Canada as a single province. Some of the islands were pro-Canada, and others, notably Jamaica, were pro-independence.
To be fair, everyone's going to have their own independent view on something, but I'm just glad people were pro-Canada in this instance, because we were offering a lot more.
Federation couldn't agree on basically anything, and so it fractured in 1962, and one by one each part became independent. And so after their freedom, surely there was no desire for any of these countries to join Canada, right?
Fair.
Well, there were two. The first was British Honduras, whose interest was much more about Britain doing a terrible job at preparing it for independence than any real desire to join another nation. Honduras and its neighbour Guatemala had many disagreements on borders, access to the sea, and trade. And Britain didn't care enough to fix any of these problems, which is why some politicians in Honduras pushed to join Canada. This never went anywhere, and British Honduras gained full independence as Belize.
To be fair, I'm Canadian, pushing military things. Oh, it's hard to explain. This is very hard to explain. So, pushing a military matter onto a country that isn't military knowledgeable of that situation is not the best situation. Joint Task Force 2 is the only unit in Canada that would be knowledgeable in any sort of situation that would have to do with this. But the SAS, and I'm Canadian, have a lot more knowledge on this particular situation. And I'm not an expert. Hey, everyone can shoot me down right now. My hands are up in the air. But I'm Canadian, and I know that what we're best at is similar to this, but not quite this. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain for Canadians, but no, SAS, for sure. Any day of the week. Anyways, let's continue.
In 1981. The second was the Turks and Caicos Islands here. The people who lived there wanted much better access to other markets and countries for themselves and for their goods. But Britain was in a no foreigners please kind of mood, and so politicians there discussed the idea of joining Canada. This proposal gained steam until the 1980s, when some prominent Canadian politicians backed the idea and official talks between the two took place. Most of the islanders backed joining Canada, but the Canadian people were very focused on another divisive issue at home, a free trade agreement with the United States. This debate raged for years and was so important to Canadians that nobody had any desire to discuss grabbing a few Caribbean islands and what that would entail.
Honestly, the thing with Canadian territories, we are so much more loving than the general other countries. We just want people to be themselves. And I don't think people understand that. Like, that's why I think Alaska would be better in Canada's hands, but we'll see.
And given that this debate took about a decade to settle down, the idea of annexing a Caribbean island just sort of faded, leaving Canada without a Hawaii of its own. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and a special thanks to my patrons, James Bisonet, Kelly Moneymaker, Sky Chappelle, Corsho Wolf, Jerry Lambdin, Jordan Longley, Adam Stilter, Marcus Arsner, Wyan Hockey, Spencer Lightfoot, Rod D. Martin, Words About Books Podcast, Captain Sidog, Gustav Swan, Marvin Cassow, Camoon Yoon, Winston Kaywood, Boogly Woogly, Daniel Tabian, Miss Izet, Matthew Shipley, Aaron the White, Corey Turner, The McWhopper, Alex Schwinn, Anthony Beckett, Copper Tone, Maggie Patskowski, Shuenin, Spinning Three Plates, and Charles the First.
Charles the First, okay. Lots of people. Shout out to all of them. Love you guys. Peace out.